Wow. My ears are still ringing from that speech last night. That was angry Joe. You know, doesn't he remind you of a king, a person that's been king for like 40 years, almost Marie Antoinette up there saying, give them their cake. My goodness, lack of priorities, a lack of priorities.
It didn't
How long
end
did it
well
take
for
her
Marie
to talk to the
Antoinette.
border? Yeah.
So the State of the Union started with kind of a State of the Union, but not ours. The first minute we heard him talking about Ukraine, it took him 40 minutes before he talked about the border. What did you make of that in the order of last night's speech?
Yeah, Charlotte, I know you all have heard me talk a lot about priorities. One of my toughest challenges up here is to set the priority. There's so many good things we could work on, but for Joe Biden, obviously, he puts the Ukraine ahead of the well-being of the United States. And that's been my point. That's why I've said I will not support Joe Biden's Ukraine funding until we secure our own border. He takes responsibility for nothing. You know, I think that's the first thing I look for a leader. Will you take responsibility for your actions, admit when you're wrong, and then recorrect the course of the ship, the direction we're going? So very, very disappointed. I think it probably took 40 minutes. What was left of my ears, I could barely understand him, and he kept blasting us out as well.
Yeah.
But as near as I could tell, it took 40 minutes to mention something other than Ukraine and really talk about the most important issue back home, and that's the open border.
So I'm going to call you doctor now. You're a United States Senator, but I want you to put on your doctor hat. And we just had a physician on a moment ago, 83 years old, and clearly still has all his marbles, all his faculties about him. What, just from your medical perspective, and I know we have to say that you've never treated the president, okay? But just based on your medical perspective, we haven't seen or heard from Joe Biden really in more than a week. Okay, he went to Camp David Friday. We saw him once outside Air Force One, and that was 3 days ago. But that last Friday is when he went to Camp David. We know he's been resting, convalescing, taking naps. But what would they give somebody to go out there and deliver? Just because his cadence, you know, there was no quieting down for the emotional moment about Lakan Riley or anything like that. It was just yelling for 67 minutes. This was not the Joe Biden that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, you know, it looked like a defensive end that had been all prepped up on some type of caffeinated products and or some type of amphetamine, Adderall, those types of things. And even it was almost like part of that was just starting to kick in. Maybe person that drank 6 cups of coffee, something like that, something that would speed up your metabolism. But it was really tough to see. I was really close, but he can't open his eyes far enough for me to look at his pupils to see what's going on there. And so much makeup, I really can't assess what's going on with his skin and my gestalt reaction to what he looks like last night. So they had him maked up pretty good. And then, of course, he can't open his eyes anymore. So it was challenging to get a good assessment. All I can tell you is the volume was times 10. And we really, really struggled to understand him. You know, I had to go home to read the speech. Next time he needs to hand out speeches to everybody so we can understand him.
You mentioned that it took him 40 minutes to talk about the border. And he only then mentioned Lakan Riley after he was being yelled at by Marjorie Taylor Greene to do so. We have a clip of that. Take a listen to this.
Lakan Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
His parents went there.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there. He called her Lakan Riley. That's not her name. It's Lakan Riley. He also then mentioned the guy who killed her, and I see you have her name right there. And we've been talking about her for 2 weeks now. When you hear the President of the United States call her a completely different name, off the cuff like that, how did you feel?
Well, this is the disconnect. Joe Biden was so angry up there. He has the name even written in front of him, Lakan Riley, a nursing student from Georgia. My wife, a nurse. I'm a physician working with nurses. I mean, this story hurts all of America, and she's become the face of the criminal element of this 10 million people that have crossed the border illegally under Joe Biden. But again, no responsibility. Joe Biden takes no responsibility for the 300 people that died yesterday from fentanyl poisoning, the 300 people that are going to die today from fentanyl poisoning, human trafficking now coming into the country at record numbers as well. I think that's the disappointment here. A, it's not a priority for Joe Biden, and B, he wants to blame somebody else for what he could have taken care of. 94 executive orders Joe Biden executed once he took office to